The last time the Indiana Hoosiers won in Columbus was 1987, a day immortalized by Earl Bruce as the darkest day in Ohio State history. Kyle Rowland from the Toledo Blade joins us now. And Kyle, if Ohio State should lose to Indiana this Saturday, I don't think it'd be the darkest day in Ohio State history like Earl Bruce called it, but it would be a shocker. It would be an upset. But it wouldn't be completely shocking because, let's face it, what we've seen out of Indiana through this first month of the season, this Hoosiers team is for real.
Yeah, I was 9 months old that 1987 game for the viewers at home. It would be stunning, I think. Even though Indiana's undefeated, obviously Ohio State's a huge favorite. I think just psychologically, it would be so weird for Indiana to beat Ohio State, just kind of like it was weird when they beat Penn State and Michigan. But Indiana, I think, is for real in the sense that they're going to put up points against Ohio State. I mean, in a normal 12-game season, I think they're probably a 9-3 or 10-2 team. The offense is really good. Defense is solid as well. I know they just had a shutout against Michigan State, which is good. I mean, shutting out any team, I think, is an accomplishment. But I'm really excited for this game. Number one, just because I thought the rest of Ohio State's season was going to be this boring slog to the Michigan game and the Big Ten championship game, and there wasn't going to be a whole lot of excitement. But here we are in late November, and undefeated Ohio State and undefeated Indiana are playing. Who would have ever really thought that? So it should be an exciting game, and I think there's going to be a lot of points that are scored.
I think in some ways there are more unanswered questions about Ohio State right now than there are Indiana, partially because Ohio State's only played the 3 games, but we haven't seen Ohio State put 4 full quarters together. The win over Penn State does not look as impressive in the rear-view mirror, and Nebraska doesn't look that good. Rutgers doesn't look that good. So I think we have a better idea of what Indiana is than what we have of an idea of what Ohio State is right now, outside of what we know in terms of what we think we know because of the talent discrepancy. But I think as a team, there are less unknowns about this Hoosiers team.
I totally agree. And I think we're going to learn a ton about Ohio State on Saturday, especially the defense. I think there's a bunch of unknowns with the defense. Obviously, the second half against Rutgers kind of raised some eyebrows. There were moments against Penn State, especially in the secondary, I thought, where Ohio State wasn't outstanding. It just, I don't know. It just seems like a unit that's not totally in sync right now. I think offensively, we kind of know what Ohio State is, and they're a juggernaut. They're one of the best offenses in the country. Justin Fields is unbelievable. I think he's for sure going to be a finalist for the Heisman. But we're going to learn a whole lot about the linebacking core, I think, Saturday, the secondary. Indiana's quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., is a really good passer. They've got some playmakers at wide receiver. And I think they're going to put some stress on Shaun Wade, Sevyn Banks, the rest of that Ohio State secondary. I still think Ohio State will probably win fairly comfortably, but I don't think Indiana is going to go quietly. I see it being, Ohio State having, 50-something and Indiana, perhaps being in the 30s. I just don't see this defensive unit as the same as 2019 when Ohio State's defense was just so good. I think there's areas where they're prone to mistakes and maybe could be exploited some by Indiana.
With Ty Freifogel, Whop Philyor, Peyton Hendershot, Indiana's got an all-name wide receiving core, but they've got talent to back up those names now too.
No doubt about it. And I mean, Shaun Wade has been, I don't know, it's been kind of interesting. He hasn't been the top 10 draft pick, Shaun Wade, so far. I don't think that's anything with his skill level. I think maybe part of that is the lack of, spring practice and opting out and maybe mentally checking out at times. I mean, he's still a wonderful player. He's still going to be a top draft pick, but he hasn't been the lockdown corner Ohio State's needed. And I think if they're going to make a really big statement and clobber Indiana and kind of show the country, hey, we are the team that can be with Alabama and Clemson and win the national title this year, then he needs to show up and be at his very best on Saturday. It kind of reminds me of the Nebraska game in 2000. It was at 16 when Ohio State won 62-3.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to do that on this week. I'm certainly not predicting it. I think the possibility is there though. But for that to happen, this has to be the Ohio State defense that we saw last season.
As an aside, that 16 Nebraska team, they came into the Horseshoe. I believe they were a top 10 team, and Ohio State did not look that impressive coming into that game. And I remember that Monday, Urban Meyer was maybe the loosest we've ever seen him in a press conference. He was cracking jokes, and you knew that Urban knew something. He knew something coming up in this matchup that he thought Ohio State was going to be able to exploit. He was able to do that against Nebraska. So this is a different type of matchup, though. Indiana, we've talked about their offense. Let's talk a little about their defense, because this is a very aggressive defense. They love to blitz, and we've seen an Ohio State offensive line that has at times been a little bit troublesome in picking up blitzes because of the youth on that offensive line, the fact that they haven't played that many snaps together. So I think as impressive as the Ohio State offense has been, this is going to be a key test to see how well that offensive line can pick up those blitzes, how well they can give Justin Fields time to pick apart the secondary.
Yeah, I think A, they need to give him time, and B, they need to protect him and not let him take hits. That is the number one, objective for any Ohio State game, is keep Justin Fields upright. Another game where the running backs as well, I think, will be tested. We'll learn a little bit more. I thought Master Teague looked really good in the Rutgers game. I'm still just surprised that Trey Sermon hasn't fully kind of taken off, but he hasn't really been totally immersed in the offense like I thought. I know he's a transfer and obviously is a weird offseason, which we talk about all the time. So I'm sure that has contributed a little bit to it. But I just think Trey Sermon is eventually going to have a game this season where everyone thinks, oh, that's the guy they were talking about in the offseason, whether it's, catching 5 passes for like 75 yards and breaking off a long run, whatever. He's going to have a game where he shows up. And, perhaps maybe that's this week. Sometimes with the blitzes, defenses are kind of susceptible to those types of plays. So I think it'll be interesting to see, how involved in the game plan he is. But I really expect Justin Fields to have a good game Saturday. Number one, because he's had 3 of them. I guess you can go back to last year. He's had like 17 straight great games. But I think with some of the things Indiana does on offense, he's going to be able to pick his spots. He had a great game last year at IU. Chris Olave was a big story last year against Indiana. I see no reason for he and Garrett Wilson and some of these wide receivers to not have a pretty good performance on Saturday.
I think one of the interesting things that will come out of this game is what the national perception is going to be. Because as you mentioned, Ohio State's got to judge themselves against the Alabamas, the Clemsons. And the fact that Ohio State lost that game last week, but did not have the game against Maryland, lost a game on their schedule, that means their margin of error is even thinner this year. And from a national perception, Indiana doesn't mean anything. Yeah, they're 4-0, but who have they played? I think in the Big Ten, I think we've seen the last couple of years, this is an Indiana program that is ascendant, that we've kind of been waiting for this type of season out of Tom Allen in Indiana. But if Ohio State only wins this game by 14 points, I don't know if that's going to help them nationally perception. And that is going to be part of the conversation for the rest of the season with Ohio State, because they're not going to necessarily have a marquee victory until maybe the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, I mean, they just need to win. If they're undefeated, they'll be fine. I think that this game, it's one of those lose-lose scenarios in a way. Like if they win close, people will kind of be like, oh, they should have won big. They're a 21-point favorite. And if they blow them out, I don't know if they'll get the full credit, just because people say, oh, I mean, it was Indiana. They're not really that good. I mean, Penn State's 0-4. They clobbered Michigan, but what's Michigan? So I definitely think that kind of will be part of it. But Ohio State needs to just put the blinders on. Don't worry about the outside noise and what other people say. Just get your own confidence. I mean, if they play a great game and win handily, and they play all 3, facets, offense, special teams, defense, and play well, that is the most important thing. I do agree that last week losing that Maryland game, it's an issue. I mean, would they have beaten Maryland handily? Probably. But just when you have an abbreviated season, every game is important. Number one, for just getting a win and but staying kind of in the rhythm, I think is huge this year because it's already messed up with the whole offseason and all that. Ryan Day talked about that today, saying, there aren't really that many, if any, benefits that Ohio State had last week, whereas Indiana won their fourth consecutive game playing well and staying in this rhythm that they've been in. So every game is really, really important and magnified this year.
That's what we love about college football. Every game is a playoff game, even before the college football playoffs came along. And this year is even more so as the Buckeyes will host Indiana. I want to thank Kyle Rowland from the Toledo Blade for joining us. And of course, you can read Kyle's Buckeye coverage both online and in the print editions of the Toledo Blade. Kyle, thank you.
Thank you.